With the ever-growing chaos surrounding a certain virus we've all heard a lot about lately, a crazy number of businesses are under serious threat. With economic woes affecting the entire world, it may only be a matter of time before some of our biggest businesses crumble to the ground. Let's see who might be next. The cruise industry. Amidst the current global pandemic that, for risk of demonetization I can't mention by name, self-isolation and social distancing are being strongly encouraged by governments worldwide. That means everyone's doing a lot less shopping and dining out, and are generally hunkering down to stay safe. But with nobody going out and spending, businesses of all types are feeling the strain. For those who make their money on pleasure cruises of the high seas, things are particularly dire. Close quarters contact with large numbers of people in recirculated air, in which the virus that must not be named can survive for up to 2 hours after an infected person sneezes, are hotbeds of the disease. And unfortunately, these are precisely the types of conditions on board ocean liners. Indeed, the cruise industry was among the first to grapple with the virus as passengers became infected and ships were quarantined in ports, with passengers locked down in their rooms. With their cruise liners docked and locked, the $150 billion industry has come to a grinding halt, bringing these companies' abilities to stay afloat into question. Industry giants like Royal Caribbean and Princess Cruises have suspended cruises for up to 60 days, a number that'll almost certainly increase. Despite otherwise solid business models and assets, without any demand for cruises, it's almost impossible for these companies to service their liabilities or to cover staff and operating costs. Royal Caribbean is cutting spending and operating expenses while attempting to rapidly liquidate its assets to plug the money that's currently hemorrhaging from its reserves. These extreme measures are essential if they hope to stand any chance of avoiding the fate of Japanese cruise operator Luminous Cruising. Luminous was forced to file for bankruptcy at the start of March after the outbreak devastated demand. And it may only be a matter of time before others follow suit. Considering cruise ships are the perfect breeding ground for infection, and with the time frame of the pandemic panic being unknown, it'll be some time before demand for cruises rises again. Of course, that's only if the holiday cruise industry doesn't sink completely. Airlines. Moving from the sea to the sky now, where the travel industry has been hit just as hard. Major airlines are at a significant risk of going under, with government-mandated travel bans and general uncertainty preventing vast amounts of would-be vacationers from booking flights. It's hardly surprising considering plane travel involves being confined to a small cabin with many other people from countless locations, all breathing partially recirculated air. Fears run high on the few flights still running, with one United flight being forced to divert after a passenger began sneezing, inciting panic among passengers. Despite flight bookings dropping by as much as 70%, airlines oddly can't afford to save money on fuel and running costs in the short term by keeping their aircrafts grounded. Most airlines are locked into fierce competitions to occupy flight slots, and giving them up means handing market dominance over to competitors. So many have taken to flying almost empty ghost flights using smaller capacity planes in a desperate attempt to retain their slots. But these kinds of practices can only last so long when no one's buying flights. American Airlines, for example, has unsustainably high long-term and short-term debt levels and is struggling to maintain operations. It's uncertain how long the effects of the pandemic will be felt in the airline industry, but the longer it lasts, the more likely bankruptcy becomes for many companies. Multiple major industry players saw their stock prices dropping by more than 25% in mere days in the wake of the pandemic, while major airlines had begun implementing layoffs, furloughs, and other ways of reducing payroll expenses. They could see cash reserves totally depleted regardless as soon as May. But the risk of bankruptcy isn't purely conjecture. It's a reality companies are already facing. UK airline Flybe collapsed in early March, while Russian Airlines and Malaysia Airlines are both currently on the brink. And until cases of the virus die down, many other airlines will join the freefall. Energy suppliers. In the second week of March 2020, oil prices fell to their lowest in almost 2 decades, resulting from a price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. These two oil giants are battling to become the dominant supplier following a significant drop in global fuel demand as the outbreak forces people into self-isolation. Saudi Arabia's tactic is slashing prices, something competitors have no choice but to follow. While this is attractive to consumers, it places already debt-ridden fuel companies under significant risk of defaulting on their bonds en masse and incurring major losses. While the biggest fuel companies can likely withstand the extended period of lower prices experts forecast, small to mid-sized companies will struggle to stay afloat. Coal supplier Foresight Energy, for example, recently filed for bankruptcy, citing the general pandemic-led economic downturn as the final straw in an economic shift that increasingly favors renewable energy. But general economic chaos is only part of the danger. Things could be brought to a grinding halt if that all-too-familiar virus infects a fuel company's staff. With management, production, or transportation workers out of action, even if the orders come flying in, they're worthless without the means to deliver on them. For a smaller company, this could mean total ruin. Gym chains. It'll come as no surprise that gyms are a hotbed for germs. The equipment and services, which are interacted with by countless perspiring people daily, easily become coated in bacteria. Something that's almost impossible to avoid, even with regular wipe-downs with disinfectant. So with a global pandemic afoot, most people, understandably, tend to avoid enclosed spaces with recirculated air, where others are breathing heavily and depositing germs all over the place. For these reasons, as well as government-encouraged social distancing, many people are opting to work out at home, and gyms are feeling the burn. Budget gym chains like Planet Fitness and Pure Gym rely on a surplus of patrons locked into monthly contracts. Even in normal circumstances, profit margins can be very thin. But as germ-concerned people begin canceling their subscriptions with so many gyms to run and maintain, these chains are losing revenue fast. Planet Fitness's share price dropped more than 30% between February and March 2020, and with concern growing, many other chains are likely to see similar drops. The outbreak is putting the business models of budget gym chains to an unprecedented test, and only time will tell if they're able to work it out. Cinemas. While movie theaters are usually a place of entertainment, munching cinema snacks in close proximity to others for an extended period could prove fatal during a pandemic. Even simply adjusting your seat then feeding yourself popcorn could lead to infection, especially considering the virus, which must not be named, can survive up to 3 days on plastic surfaces. In an industry whose survival hinges on high turnouts to blockbusters, it's unsurprising that the outbreak has proven disastrous to cinemas. With many theaters being forced to close under government instruction, cinema chains like Cineworld have reported that the disease could threaten their ability to stay in business. After all, losing an estimated 3 months' worth of revenue, quite possibly even more, is a devastating blow to businesses in an already unstable industry. Cineworld stock dropped 70% between January and March of 2020, and many other chains are dealing with similar realities. If a solution isn't reached soon, this global crisis could be the final curtain call for many theaters. Restaurants, bars, and clubs. The hospitality industry is heavily reliant on consistent patronage, but unfortunately, most people only regularly spend money on dining and nightlife when the economy is doing well. And amid layoffs, social distancing, and forced closures, and with a recession on the horizon, eating and drinking out is becoming increasingly difficult for potential customers. Running a restaurant, bar, or club is difficult at the best of times, with high rent and costly overheads that never decrease. But when the money to pay these overheads instantly disappears during widespread lockdowns and quarantines, the only options are to lay off staff and most likely close up. And for small, local, and often family-owned businesses, these closures could well be permanent. This could have a huge impact on town centers, as the local individual bars, restaurants, and clubs that give a town its character simply up and vanish. Panic and paranoia also have a role to play in the survival of bars and restaurants at a time like this, specifically, in this case, Chinese restaurants. With prevalent stereotypes of poor restaurant hygiene and the association of China with the outbreak, Chinese restaurants are suffering more than anyone. Across the world, Chinese restaurants are reporting disproportionately large drops in business, commonly exceeding 80%, with other types of Asian restaurants experiencing similar discrimination. With impacts like these, the global presence of Asian restaurants could substantially decrease by the time the pandemic has passed. For these restaurant owners and the hospitality industry as a whole, the only hope lies in government stepping in with urgent support. The entertainment industry. An often forgotten financial casualty of our current pandemic is the entertainment industry. From actors and musicians to catering staff and event organizers, industry workers of all kinds face the possibility of months with no work and no reimbursement. Huge music festivals like Coachella and countless film and TV productions have been canceled or postponed, and the list continues to grow by the day. Workers who depend on events and projects like these for their income will face serious financial woes without governmental assistance, and smaller entertainment companies face imminent collapse. But worst of all, pop stars might not receive their millions of dollars for festival headline slots. Whatever will they do? Retailers. In the irrational panic buying mania the outbreak has brought about, toilet paper has become white gold. As a result, stores that stock essentials of the hygiene variety like TP and hand sanitizer are thriving, while non-essential retailers are going bust. On the cusp of an economic crisis, shopping for anything other than necessities is low priority. For non-essential products stocking department stores like JCPenney, who already walk a thin line between success and collapse, these falling sales could be devastating. Noticing rapidly dwindling numbers as stores are forced to close under governmental policies, suppliers may get skittish and demand payment en masse, something which could bankrupt retailers like JCPenney. Sears is in a similarly precarious position, having narrowly survived bankruptcy in 2018. The chain has continued to shrink and lose money, and the virus's disruptions may deliver the final blow to the once prolific retailer. When crisis hits, even long-standing giants like these two could be wiped from the face of the retail world forever. Six Flags. With all this chaos, it'd be real nice to be able to unwind with a day at a theme park. But restricted travel and increasing isolation makes popular amusement destinations a no-go. Of course, it's understandable why theme parks close during a health crisis. After all, a bustling environment filled with thousands of people squashed into germ-filled rides is pretty much the polar opposite of government-mandated self-isolation. Large groups of people increase the likelihood of the virus spreading, putting guests and staff alike at risk. But while avoidance and closures are understandable, the timing couldn't be any worse. Across the world, amusement parks have been ordered to close during one of their largest revenue periods, spring break. Six Flags is particularly aware of the strain of a shutdown and a wider economic downturn, having previously faced bankruptcy in 2009. The loss of constant customer turnover seriously jeopardizes a business like Six Flags, considering the huge overheads that inevitably come with a business based around multi-million-dollar roller coasters. Six Flags initially remained open when the infection began spreading, upping their cleaning efforts in an attempt to cling to revenue, while others like Disneyland closed up, but it was only delaying the inevitable. Now Six Flags around the US have started closing for a period of 1 month, a figure that will inevitably grow longer as the virus spreads, with more closures likely to follow. With unsustainable levels of debt on its balance sheet and a 65% loss in market value between February and March 2020, Six Flags might have reached the end of its wild ride. How are you adapting to the crazy struggles of 2020? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.